Chapter 021-Moonlight Maria. Sir, do you want to live here? Swordmaster Longma asked, even more excited. He can't get out of this fog. Once the sun shines, his whole person will be completely scrapped. Only by relying on the dread bark can he continue to survive. Let's live here for a while, and then see what's planned next. Anyway, it's definitely impossible to stay here forever. Li Ang showed a smile and said slowly. Also, according to your terrifying swordsmanship, at least, if you go to Wano country, you can be admired as a top swordsman. The swordsman Ryoma showed a bit of sadness, and when he talked about Wano Kingdom, he sighed for a while. How is Wano country now? This is a piece of his heart. Even if he becomes a zombie, he wants to see the changes in Wano Kingdom. But this is also his unfounded worry. He couldn't leave the magic triangle. How could he go to Wano in the new world? Take me to Moonlight Maria. Li Ang looked at the dim environment ahead and said bluntly. Sir, please come with me. Swordsman Ryoma nodded and took Li Ang to Moonlight Maria's castle. When Moonlight Maria had no orders, he acted autonomously. Therefore, he can follow Li Ang's words and lead the way for the other party. Soon, under the leadership of the swordsman Longma, Li Ang successfully arrived at the gate of a castle. At first glance, this is a very large castle. The Western-style castle looks very spectacular and has a historical charm. However, the surrounding dim environment made the castle look a little gloomy. A castle that exists independently, like the base of the devil. This is Moonlight Maria's castle, right? Li Ang looked at the castle, calmly, and smiled lightly. Sir, please come in. Swordmaster Longmara opened the door, pointed inside, and said in a low voice. Li Ang entered the castle without any tension. Flames were raised on both sides, illuminating the entire dark interior of the castle. The interior of the castle is very beautifully decorated. Ordinary people, if they heard the name of Moonlight Maria, would have fled here. But Li Ang is naturally different. He doesn't need to fear anyone. Even if this is the base of the four emperors, he can act like a back garden, so he doesn't need to be afraid. Extreme speed, so that he will not be easily caught. The ultimate swordsmanship gave him the power to kill. Chapter 021-Moonlight Maria, NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. The ultimate swordsmanship gave him the power to kill. Combining the two together, he represents the god of death. Others only need to beg him not to kill people. There is no such thing as others killing him. The interior of the castle is a bit cold. The castle is huge, and the number of people living there is limited. It was probably Moonlight Maria and those few men. As for the other subordinates, as early as when Moonlight Maria was roaming in the New World, he was killed by Kaido, and he was the only one left to escape. Since then, he has never had the courage to enter the New World, as if he was frightened. It is obviously not the first time that the swordsman is well versed in the castle. Castle, hall. In the empty hall, there were Moonlight Maria, the genius surgeon Hogbark, the transparent fruit person Absalom, and the Mononoke princess Perona. 4 people represent the tallest leader of the 3-masted sailing ship. Headed by Moonlight Maria, the 3 weirdos under his command are all gathered here. While they were talking, a footstep sounded suddenly, echoing between the corridors. Ta-ta-ta. The sound of footsteps was very obvious, and more than one person. Who is so bold? Moonlight Maria narrowed her eyes slightly, looking at the corridor outside the door, her voice sharp. Ryoma. Perona's voice was crisp, with a smile, and her appearance was very fresh and beautiful. Although she has a lowly face, she is still very plump, dressed like a princess in a cartoon, holding a rag doll and blinking big eyes, very cute. Hogbak and Absalom also looked at him. Right in their sight. Sure enough, I saw the swordsman dragon and horse walking step by step. But behind Ryoma, a young man also appeared in their sight. Who is it? Let this guy Ryoma bring him here in person. Moonlight Moria was even more curious, her eyes narrowed into a gap, said. Morlia-sama, something is not quite right. Absalom raised his brows, and there was always an ominous feeling in his heart. But having been in the magic triangle for a long time has given Moonlight Moria a blind confidence in his own strength. Rather than blind confidence, it is better to say that he is too afraid of being dominated by Kaido. As a result, he can't get away from that fear now. In order to show his self-confidence, his mentality has gradually become defiant. This can be considered, his subconscious, a kind of protection for himself. P.S. Ask for flowers, comment tickets, thank you. Chapter 022_Negotiation. When Li Ang appeared in the eyes of Moonlight Moria and the other three weirdos, it brought silence. The whole place was silent. Ryoma stood aside consciously and did not speak. The rest is left to Li Ang to handle the whole process. It's you. Moonlight Moria's pupils shrank, staring at Li Ang, a little surprised. Just now, they were discussing the things on the bounty list. At this moment, he actually met the righteous master. The second man who escaped from the Push City. It's a total surprise to have come to our terrifying bark. Hogbok showed his sharp teeth and smiled softly, without any fear. The three strange people blindly worship Moonlight Moria, and feel extremely confident in Moonlight Moria's strength. Boy, what are you doing here? Absalom was even more unscrupulous, glanced at Li Ang, and asked lightly. Moonlight Moria stared at Li Ang. He was not stupid. When he saw Longma leading Li Ang over, he knew that this matter was not simple. In general, when Longma encounters such a person, he is the first to do it. Now, Ryoma took the initiative to bring this person to the castle, which shows a problem. I'm just afraid that the person in front of me is not weak. In other words, the level of swordsmanship is not low, so that even Ryoma did not do it, showing such a respectful look. In the face of everyone's questioning, Li Ang was unmoved. With a smile, he walked away from Perona's side, leaned directly against Perona, sat on the sofa, and stretched his hands. See. The four Moonlight Moria looked at each other with strange expressions. They have never seen a scene where a stranger is so familiar with the host's house, especially a stranger, without permission. Li Ang, why are you here? Moonlight Moria looked at Li Ang and asked. He treated Li Ang with caution in his heart, but he did not lose his confidence. Even when a fight broke out, he was fearless. The purpose? Very simple, I want half of the site here. Li Ang smiled, looked at Moonlight Moria, and said bluntly. Well. Moonlight Moria raised her brows, her expression a little unpleasant. What half of the site? The dread bark, from now on, half mine and half yours, how? I came here to negotiate with you. Li Ang leaned back on the sofa and continued. Are you joking? Absalom sneered, facing Li Ang with an angry face. Why should we divide our territory in half with you? Chapter 022_Negotiation, NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. Why should we divide our territory in half with you? The fat man Hogbok was even more unscrupulous, stood up, walked in front of Li Ang, looked down condescendingly, and looked extremely confident. You know, who are you talking to yourself? Even if you escape from the advanced city, so what? Do you think this is the capital of your negotiation with me? Moonlight Moria looked at Li Ang coldly and said. Don't interrupt. Now, I have a few more conditions. You should listen to me first. Li Ang smiled, his face relaxed and natural. Hearing this, Moonlight Moria's expression became more gloomy, and the three of them, including the three weirdos, looked at Li Ang and became more and more unfriendly. You said. Moonlight Moria's mood was very depressed, burning with anger, like a volcano, always ready to erupt. Let Ryoma be my servant, and also, plus Perona, take care of my daily life, as my maid. By the way, add a little more, on my territory, without permission, you can't step into the halfway step. Okay, that's all for now. Li Ang smiled unabated, glanced at Perona's lowly face but had a devilish figure, and said involuntarily, having such a maid is more pleasing to the eye. At least, while he was staying in the terror bark, he went about his daily life and had someone to help execute it. It is enough for him to just enjoy life. For the time being. Moonlight Moria's forehead bulged with blue veins, and her voice was hoarse. Is it possible? Are you still thinking about adding conditions later? That's right, very clever. Li Ang clapped his palms, smiled and nodded. Are you talking about a dream? Absalom and Hogback roared with anger on their faces. Aside. Perona, who was sitting beside Li Ang, said nothing. Her big smart eyes looked at Li Ang curiously, and said, brother, believe it or not, I made you doubt life. You can't even control yourself. The true feelings of living are revealed. Quote. In front of me, you still dare to speak like this, who gave you the courage? Just because you can escape from the advanced city, will I give you face? I am Moonlight Maria. Moonlight Moria stood up, his height almost broke the ceiling, looking down at Li Ang, without any emotion, said coldly. The four of them, invariably, developed hostility towards Li Ang. The scene was tense for a time, and the battle was about to break out. Under the pressure of the four people present, Li Ang still had the same expression, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, and said, what do you mean now? That is to say, we can't talk about it. Do you think we are fools? Moonlight Moria had that unique sharp laughter and eyes with strong interest. Looking at your courage, I think your shadow will definitely be very unique. Today, I will leave your shadow. Quote. P.S. Ask for flowers, comment tickets. Thank you. Chapter 023 hearing value plus 999999. His corpse is very good. If you let me sew it up, it feels like another dragon and horse. Not bad, not bad. The more I think about it, the more excited I get. Hogbok sneered, looked at Li Ang, and said, first, let me turn him into my doll. The ghost Princess Perona was dissatisfied, her pretty face showed a bit of interest, and she said quickly. Everyone was not too nervous. Only Ryoma, standing aside, shook his head inwardly, but did not speak. Only he knows how terrifying Li Ang's strength is. Swordsmanship is at its pinnacle. Although there may be only insufficient explosive power left, relying on pure swordsmanship, it can completely shake the guys like Moonlight Moria. And, it's just a very easy thing. You guys are really brave. With a smile, Li Ang lay on the sofa, unmoved. Seeing Li Ang's calm expression, Moonlight Moria couldn't help narrowing her eyes and instructed Absalom, do it. That's what it means. Absalom nodded. Immediately, his whole person disappeared in everyone's sight. Transparent fruit. It can make people enter a state of transparency, and people can't see the signs of his existence. Of course, it is only valid for vision, but not for hearing, smell, and arrogance. Therefore, his ability seems to be very arrogant, but in fact, when he encounters a real powerhouse, he cannot get close to the enemy at all when the domineering and domineering are all unfolded. Oh, gone. Li Ang showed a hint of surprise, and smiled even more. Big brother, be careful. He is a transparent man with transparent fruits, you can't see him. If I accidentally die, I will be very troubled. After all, you can be my puppet. Perona floated in the air, her long slender legs were very conspicuous, and she said innocently. Don't worry. Li Ang looked at Perona and smiled, I will catch you as a maid. Well. Perona frowned and didn't speak. Don't procrastinate, do it for me. Moonlight Moria's forehead burst into blue veins and shouted. Immediately, Absalom, who became a transparent man, was ready to attack Li Ang's position. In fact, his strength is not very strong. It can only be said that he is slightly stronger than ordinary people. Most importantly, he still relies too much on his devil fruit. In the public eye. Li Ang had a bit of interest on his face and glanced at the surrounding scene without making a sound. The transparent man Absalom approached step by step, and his voice was so subtle that Li Ang couldn't detect it at all. Congratulations to the host, open the modifier, the hearing value is plus 999,999. Comprehend Shunfeng breakthrough novice, breakthrough entry, breakthrough proficiency, breakthrough master, breakthrough master. Chapter 023 _ hearing value plus 999999. NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. Comprehend Shunfeng breakthrough novice, breakthrough entry, breakthrough proficiency, breakthrough master, breakthrough master. The system's voice echoed in Li Ang's mind. In an instant, his hearing was modified to the extreme. Any turbulence around him lingered in his ears. Including the castle, in the area of several hundred meters, the whispers of some insects and the beat of some leaves were very subtle, and he still couldn't escape his ears. Even, underground, the subtle movements of those zombies were clearly heard by him. This is the effect of hearing to achieve the ultimate response. Shunfeng, so lucky. Li Ang's eyes flickered, but he never thought that he would trigger the system modifier again. The hearing value has been modified to the extreme, both good and bad. On weekdays, I am afraid that sleep will be disturbed. If it can be retracted freely, it will be even more perfect. At present, Li Ang still needs to try the utility of Shunfeng from the people at hand. The transparent man Absalom was already standing beside Li Ang, holding a knife and attacking Li Ang's head quickly. He laughed wildly, and said, "Give me death." However, what he couldn't believe was, before his attack arrived, Li Ang's figure had disappeared from the sofa. At the same time, Li Ang appeared and sat on another sofa, with Moonlight Moria standing next to him, also full of astonishment. He was smiling, his eyes staring at the empty space ahead. There, the transparent man Absalom is standing. Hearing has reached the extreme, so the fruit ability of the transparent man Absalom is useless. Unless he has elementalization. Otherwise, no matter how strong he is, when he walks, he will make a subtle sound. When his body is in contact with the air, there is a certain sound. It's just that on weekdays, people's hearing can't detect the existence of this kind of sound. However, Li Ang, who has modified his hearing through the modifier, can capture these sounds very clearly. So much so that the ability of the transparent fruit completely lost its original effect in front of him. At this time, Li Ang's eyes were looking at the transparent Absalom, and smiled. Don't be too surprised, this is just a basic operation. He can actually see. It's impossible. Absalom's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief, and he lost his voice. ... P.S. Ask for flowers, comment tickets. Thank you. Chapter 024 _ can't hit at all. Transparent fruit has always been his biggest support. If the ability of the transparent fruit is seen through, then he will not have any ability to deal with those who are stronger than him. In front of Li Ang, it seems that even the transparent fruit has failed. The transparent person is no longer transparent, and the ability of the devil fruit is invalid, making Absalom instantly reduced to an ordinary person, without any advantages at all. Every transparent person is seen through. How did he do it? Moonlight Moria was a little stunned, staring at Li Ang, said. Are you confused? From beginning to end, Li Ang seemed to be calm, and smiled lightly. How did you do it? Absalom dissipated his ability and reappeared. Standing in front of Li Ang, his face was full of palpitations, and his eyes were full of panic. This was the first time he had encountered such a thing. Devil fruit ability, invalid. Even the ghost Princess Perona looked at Li Ang suspiciously, floating in the air, holding an umbrella, like a princess in a fairy tale world, wearing porcelain doll-like clothes, extremely cute. Why do I know your movements? Of course, I heard. Li Ang said slowly with a smile. He found that talking with these guys seemed like a good thing too. At least, seeing each other in the first place, how boring it was. Anyway, there is so much time, as long as no one disturbs him, he can stay here in the dread bark until one day, he wants to leave. Anyway, he stayed here for a lot of time, and he didn't mind teasing these guys. Here. Absalom frowned, it was the first time he had encountered such an answer. What a keen sense of hearing was required to hear his deliberately slow movements. The flow of air will still produce sound when it is blocked by people. However, your hearing is too weak to detect it at all. But I am different, I can hear it clearly. Therefore, I can judge the direction of a person's existence. Because the circulation of air is blocked in a certain area, I can immediately guess that there is an object in that place, although it seems to be nothing. Blocking the flow of air. Quote. Do you understand this explanation? Liang sat on the sofa, stretched his hands comfortably, and said casually. Hearing, does it have such a profound effect? Moonlight Moria was a little stunned. What Liang said, even he had never heard of it. But after hearing this, I always feel that although I don't understand it, it feels like it's real, and people can't help but be convinced. The rest of the Habuk, being a gifted surgeon, also had some basic knowledge. However, how terrible is his hearing, who can do this? Hogbuk looked at Liang with deep fear in his eyes. He understands that ordinary people's hearing is limited to those obvious sound fluctuations. The so-called sound of blocked air circulation is difficult for ordinary people to hear. Chapter 024_ can't type at all. The so-called sound of blocked air circulation is difficult for ordinary people to hear. Lord Mariah. Absalom looked depressed, looked at Moonlight Mariah, lowered his head, and said. His proud fruit ability collapsed in front of Liang. Naturally, he also has no desire to attack. This is simply to die. Let me come. Perona's eyes flashed brightly, her face full of smiles, and she said quickly. Then, she used the power of the spirit fruit, and a ghost drifted out of him. Negative ghost. Perona floated in the air, looking at Liang's position with a very sly smile. A ghost-like object just floated towards Liang's position. Even Liang couldn't ignore the influence of devil fruit. But, what he can do is to escape. As long as he avoids the ghost, he will naturally be unscathed. Seeing the ghost floating in front of him, Liang's eyes flashed a little, and said, is this a ghost? It's really a strange existence. The existence of devil fruits is amazing. After he finished speaking, he disappeared in place. Next second. Liang stood beside Perona and smiled, are you looking for me? Ah! Perona screamed and floated in the air. One unstable, fell to the ground, and her buttocks hit the ground. The pain caused a little mist from her eyes. You. After regaining her senses, Perona's slender jade pointed at Liang, her red lips trembling, unable to speak. Liang's strange speed, more ghostly than a ghost, made her unexpected, and she was so shocked by this sudden flash that she almost spit out the food from last night. When did it appear? Moonlight Moria was startled, took a half step back and stared at Liang suspiciously. Hogbuk and Absalom were terrified. Liang's speed was too fast, and there was no sign of abandoning his concerns. Only after he himself reappeared, everyone could reflect that, it turned out that he had disappeared just now. This bizarre speed made Perona's devil fruit turn into a bubble and become a tasteless rib. Can't hit at all. ... P.S. Ask for flowers, comment tickets. Thank you. Chapter 025_lonely too fast. How about being my maid? 3 meals a day for you. Liang stood beside Perona and said with a smile. You, don't come here, I. Perona fell to the ground, looking slightly flustered, said. She was not very courageous, because of the uniqueness of devil fruits, she could deal with many ordinary people. But when she encounters a strong person, her fruit ability does not play a big role. How are you? Liang's eyes narrowed slightly, and he moved closer to Perona's side. Scatter the bats. Moonlight Mariah was full of anger, and immediately activated the power of the devil fruit. The bats formed by the scattered shadows attacked Li Yang's position. Groups of bats flew away indiscriminately. At the same time, Li Yang's eyes moved, and he glanced in the direction of Moonlight Mariah. Seeing the shadow bat flying to his position, he stepped out, and the whole person disappeared in place. Suddenly, all the shadow bats dissipated after they could not find the target to attack. What about people? Moonlight Mariah's pupils shrank, and she whispered, "Lord Mariah, be careful." Absalom was horrified, pointed to Moonlight Mariah's side, and shouted, "Not good." Moonlight Mariah kicked her feet, and her huge body was still very flexible, and suddenly left the position she was standing. After waiting for him to stand on his feet, looking back, Li Yang didn't know when he started, and he was already standing next to the position he had just now, with a smile on his face, motionless. Just now, the opponent had a chance to attack him. This point, Moonlight Mariah is very clear in his heart. Immediately after, in the sight of Moonlight Mariah, Li Yang took the first step, and the figure disappeared again. The next second, Li Yang stood beside Moonlight Mariah and said with a smile, "What? Can't find my position? Pretend to be a ghost." Moonlight Mariah took a half step back, her shadows turned into a group of bats, and she hurriedly attacked. Unfortunately, Li Yang's figure disappeared again. The speed was too fast. The bat could only keep attacking the afterimage. After tearing the afterimage, it turned into a mass of air and gradually dissipated. The huge hall was silent. Although he didn't want to admit it, Moonlight Mariah had to admit that Li Yang's speed was too fast, and he couldn't help him at all. No wonder, the opponent was able to escape from the advanced city. It is because the opponent has this terrifying speed as the basis to escape from the advanced city. Come on, if you can touch the edge of my shirt, I'll lose. Besides, how about I leave the terror bark immediately without saying a word? When Li Yang appeared again, he was already sitting on the sofa. Chapter 025-2 Fast Loneliness. NLT, 29 and GT. When Li Yang appeared again, he was already sitting on the sofa. He lightly held a bottle of red wine on the table, pushed the red wine away, and rolled his throat. Grumpy. He felt as if he was in his own home, without any scruples. Go. Moonlight Mariah took a deep breath, and once again activated the ability of the shadow fruit. Each shadow turned into objects of different shapes, and launched a rapid attack on Li Yang. Shadow gun. Moonlight Mariah's shadow formed a gun, a huge black gun, facing Li Yang at a very fast speed, and instantly launched an attack. The shadow is very fast. But no matter how fast the speed is, it can't match Li Yang's speed. Before the shadow gun arrived, Li Yang disappeared into the sofa. At the same time, he appeared beside Perona, who was full of astonishment, staring blankly at the sudden appearance of Li Yang, who was simply fascinated. Be my maid, you won't suffer, just think about it. Li Yang reached out and stroked Perona's delicate face, which was tender and smooth, making people linger. With a smile on his face, he turned his head and looked at Moonlight Mariah. When Li Yang turned around, Perona was still in a stunned state, feeling the heat of her face being touched, which made her pretty face a little hot, and the fear in her heart became more intense. This was the first time she felt that she was so close to death. If just now, Li Yang launched the attack instantly, I am afraid that Perona would have been reduced to a cold corpse and completely disappeared from this world. Damn boy. Moonlight Mariah's forehead bulged with blue veins, and those sharp fangs were like a demon, staring at Li Yang with his eyes fixed. The shadow on his body turned into various weapons and launched an offensive against Li Yang. Li Yang's speed is too fast. Any attack by Moonlight Mariah could not even touch the corner of Li Yang's clothes, let alone hurt him. This is too difficult for Moonlight Mariah. Whoosh, whoosh. Li Yang's figure kept disappearing in the hall, making people dazzled. Sometimes by the window, sometimes on the sofa. Moonlight Moria's attack is very fast, and the speed is getting faster and faster. But Li Ang's speed was obviously faster, effectively preventing any blow from Moonlight Moria. "Stop, can't you just come face to face with me?" Moonlight Moria was burning with anger, looking very aggrieved, and shouted loudly. "I just like to watch others look angry but helpless. It's so interesting. What's more, it's still a king who goes to the 7 Marshalseas. This kind of scene is rare." Li Ang burst out laughing. With his terrifying speed and playing with Moonlight Moria, he still brought him a lot of fun. Especially seeing the angry expression of the other party, he felt more comfortable. The speed is too fast, and it is also an indescribable loneliness. ... P.S. Ask for flowers, ask for comment tickets. Thank you all the guests. NLT, 30 and GT. Chapter 026 _ The sword points to Moria. It's not the way to go on like this. Moonlight Moria's complexion changed slightly, becoming heavier. His attack speed couldn't keep up with Li Ang's evasion speed. In this way, even if he hit for 3 days and 3 nights, he wouldn't even be able to touch Li Ang's hair, let alone inflict heavy damage on the opponent. Really? Those who can escape from the advancing city are really not easy. However, he was not afraid. At least, for now, Li Ang has been avoiding his attacks unilaterally, rather than colliding with him head-on. Therefore, Moonlight Moria had some speculation in his heart, thinking that Li Ang should be a speed-type powerhouse, and the power caused by the attack should not be very large. Otherwise, the other party should have done something to him long ago, and he has not done it for a long time, so he must be afraid of him. In fact, Moonlight Moria didn't know, his thoughts were just wishful thinking. Why didn't Li Ang attack? That's because he doesn't want to end the battle so soon, and play with Moonlight Moria, Shichibukai. If he really wants to do it, Li Ang will grasp it again and lose Moonlight Moria in seconds. If you are in the era when the new world is rampant, I may feel a little tricky. It's a pity that you no longer have the courage and strength of the year when you fled back to the Great Channel from the New World. Li Ang looked at Moonlight Moria, shook his head and chuckled. This is a pitiful story of the strong, gradually becoming the weak. Once, Moonlight Moria's strength was very terrifying. Ever since he was killed by Kaido, he was no longer as brave as before, hiding in the magic triangle of the Great Channel, not daring to go anywhere. He also fantasized about creating zombies constantly, then re-entering the new world and destroying Kaido. But this is just his fantasy. The longer he stays in this weak sea, the more his edge will be worn down, and his strength will not be at its peak. No pressure, no motivation. The new world is full of crises, and the Great Waterway, although there is no shortage of dangerous areas, is nothing compared to the new world. After a long time of comfort, the body will rust. Just like the Moonlight Moria in front of me, the comfortable time is too long and too long. As a result, his strength level plummeted. Forget it, since you want to confront me so hard, then I will fulfill you. Li Ang raised a smile on the corner of his mouth and said meaningfully. Come on. Moonlight Moria was expressionless and said coldly. Borrow a knife and use it. Li Ang looked in the direction of the dragon and the horse, the corner of his mouth moved slightly, and said. Sir, please use it. Chapter 026 _ The sword points to Moria. NLT, 31 and GT. Sir, please use it. After the swordsman Longma nodded, he threw the black sword Chushui into the air with a little excitement. A famous sword, with a famous master. In the hands of Li Ang, the black knife and autumn water can shine even more brilliantly. This is something that Zhanao Longma can't give Heidao Chushui. After all, he is already dead, and even if he doesn't die, he can't reach this level and realm of Li Ang. Someday. It is a very gratifying thing to be able to see the famous sword that I am wearing, being used by a top swordsman in the hand. Nice knife. Li Ang held the black knife Chushui in his hand, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he appreciated it. Your Excellency is welcome, it is a blessing for it to appear in your hands. The swordsman Longman was terrified, lowered his head, and said hastily. In his philosophy, a powerhouse like Li Ang should be worthy of the supreme sword. Compared with the 12 workers of the supreme quick knife, He Dao Chu Shui is still a bit behind. Although it is said that in the country of Wano, the meaning of He Dao Chu Shui is far-reaching, but in terms of quality and power, the 12 craftsmen of the supreme knife are the top. Ryoma, you bastard. Moonlight Moria saw that his dragon and horse actually offered his sword, which made him even more angry, gnashing his teeth. His sharp teeth were like the fangs of a demon, and he shouted angrily. Moonlight Maria, are you ready? Li Ang held the black knife Chushui in his hand, pointed at Moonlight Moria, and said lightly. At the same time, a terrifying aura spread over his body, the sword energy shot into the sky, and the fierce aura pressed against the shoulders of everyone present. Everyone can feel this fierce sword energy. The momentum is like a rainbow. Stand out. Swordsman, sword chi is the only basis for judging the strength of a swordsman. Any swordsman is a sharp-edged man, unable to hide this fierce sword aura. This proves that in the heart of Jianao, there is a heart to fight, and then the indomitable sword energy will burst out. So strong, the lord who holds the famous sword is countless times more terrifying than the one who holds the branch. This is the real great swordsman, the real top swordsman. On the side, the swordsman Long Ma was stunned. He looked at Li Ang's heroic appearance holding a black knife and autumn water. He was deeply impressed by the other party, and his heart was full of shock. At the same time, his eyes were fiery, and he couldn't wait to see it. When holding a famous sword, what kind of terrifying level will the extreme swordsmanship that Li Ang burst out? P.S. 3 more flowers, please comment. Thank you. And LT, 32 and GT. Chapter 027 hit hard. This kid. Moonlight Moria's pupils shrank, staring at Li Ang in surprise. He had to admit that he felt a huge pressure from Li Ang. The sword energy was soaring to the sky, so he had to be careful. As one of the 7 martial seas under the king, and a big pirate who has roamed the new world, Moonlight Moria has seen many swordsmen. But now, when he felt Li Ang's sword energy, he had a shocking guess in his heart. Of all the swordsmen he had seen in the past, none of them could compare to Li Ang at this moment. Even the Eagle Eye, who was once the king of Chihuahai, doesn't seem to be more substantial than the Li Ang sword in front of him, and it is more pressing. Of course, when Hawkeye really started, Moonlight Moria had never seen it. Therefore, he couldn't really compare Hawkeye with the Li Ang in front of him. But being able to bring such a huge sword chi coercion is enough to prove that the strength of Li Ang in front of him is really terrifying. The other party was able to escape from the advancing city, not because of luck, but by virtue of real strength. He was able to escape from the advancing city unscathed and without paying any price. At this moment, Moonlight Moria's face was solemn and meticulous, and she was full of energy. In the face of Li Ang, a little carelessness would cost him his own life. Beside, the 3 weirdos Absalom, the genius Dr. Hogbag, and the ghost Princess Perona, who was sitting on the ground, were all suppressed by this terrifying aura. The 3 of them looked at each other with astonishment, all panicked. Unexpectedly, Li Ang, who looks like an ordinary person. At this moment, the power that burst out can reach this level. If the other party was serious about fighting with them just now, they would not be able to live until now. Especially Perona, she stroked her face with her left hand and her eyes were dumbfounded. Just now, Li Ang really had the opportunity to kill her. So strong. Perona's red lips parted slightly, looking at Li Ang's back. All of a sudden, the 3 of them felt the same. Li Ang's figure became so tall that they couldn't breathe. Facing such a terrifying powerhouse, they couldn't move. Can Lord Maria handle it? Hogbok's fat body couldn't help but tremble, shivering. If Moonlight Moria loses, it will be the 3 of them who suffer. In the sight of everyone, Moonlight Moria's huge body, soaring to the ceiling, looked down at Li Ang, who was short in his eyes. That short figure gave him a strong sense of oppression. Are you ready? The corners of Li Ang's mouth twitched slightly, and he smiled slowly. Holding the black knife Chushui in his hand gave him a completely different feeling than holding a branch. A swordsman, it is better to use a famous sword to show his swordsmanship. Although, he has the ultimate swordsmanship, but the power that can be burst out is also very different with different weapons. Come to fight. Chapter 027_hit hard. NLT, 33 and GT. Come to fight. Moonlight Moria was expressionless, her smile converged, and she was icy cold. At the same time, he was under a lot of pressure. Be careful, don't be killed by my swordsmanship. Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, and he said with a smile on his face. Shadow Gun. Moonlight Moria took the lead in launching the attack. In order to prevent being suppressed by Li Ang's attack, he chose to attack suddenly. But Li Ang's speed was too fast, and even a little bit of trouble could not escape his perception. Whoosh! Li Ang's figure disappeared. What about people? Moonlight Moria was shocked, her eyes turned, looking for Li Ang's figure. You can't even catch my direction, how can you fight me? Li Ang's voice drifted in Moonlight Moria's ears. Immediately, Moonlight Moria controlled the shadow gun and stabbed the position behind him. Li Ang disappeared again, the next second. He appeared in front of Moonlight Moria, less than 5 meters away, holding a black knife in autumn water, exuding a fierce breath. His eyes did not contain any emotional fluctuations, and he stared at Moonlight Moria. It was as if in the whole world, only Yugong Moria was left, with nothing else to focus on. Not good. Moonlight Moria realized after realizing it, and turned around quickly. At the same time, Li Ang's sword energy, the terrifying sword glow, and the dazzling light shone through, stabbing his eyes so much that he couldn't open them. This sword glow was so dazzling that it almost enveloped the huge hall. The 3 weirdos were also unable to open their eyes, and could only block the light with their hands. In the blurred vision, they saw the slash, which was slashing directly at Moonlight Moria's chest. Cut. Li Ang held the black knife Chushui, slowly raised it, and put it down instantly. The terrifying sword glow disappeared in a flash. Puff. A touch of crimson, thrown in the air, sprinkled on the ground, dyed the entire floor red. There was a thick smell of blood in the air. Plop, sound. Ah. Moonlight Moria's lips trembled, her eyes were white, she opened her mouth, vomited blood, and fell to the ground, looking very embarrassed. At the mouth of his chest, he was slashed by Li Ang, directly piercing his chest. The blood slowly flowed from the position of the chest, slowly overflowed, and gradually appeared on the ground, which was very dazzling. As for Moonlight Moria himself, his face was pale, he was severely injured by a blow, and he was even on the verge of death. P.S. 4 more flowers and comments. Thank you all. NLT, 34 and GT. Chapter 028_perfect swordsmanship. Silence. In the entire castle, at the hall. The 3 weirdos stiffened, their bodies were cold, their scalps were numb, and their spines were wet with cold sweat. They stared blankly at the fallen Moonlight Moria, their faces full of shock, and their expressions were full of astonishment. Unbelievable. One of the king's 7 Marshalseas, the tyrannical Moonlight Moria, was slashed by this man, and was instantly severely injured and was on the verge of death. It's just so dreamy. Even if it is a dream, the result cannot be imagined. This is one of the 7 Marshalseas, with a bounty of 320 million berry, who used to be domineering in the New World, Moonlight Moria. But he was still hit so hard and easily. Morlia-sama. Absalom looked terrified, walked out quickly, and shouted. Hogbok also took out some surgical tools and wanted to quickly stop the bleeding for Moonlight Moria, but was afraid of Li Ang's sudden attack, and was a little timid. Just when they were frightened, Boom. Another bang. Everyone looked at the ceiling. The stone slabs of the castle are very sturdy and are made of many sturdy materials. Moreover, where they are now is in the middle of the castle, and further up, there are about 5 or 6 floors, and the floors of each floor are made of very solid stone slabs. However, right in their sight, I see that dazzling slash, after hitting Moonlight Moria hard, hit the ceiling horizontally. Moreover, it penetrated the position of the heavy ceiling. Boom. The slashing power is terrifying, penetrating the floor. No matter how solid the floor is, it is useless here. Like white paper, it is easily crushed and penetrated. Finally, slash to break through the castle, and the middle of the entire castle is upwards. All were destroyed by this slash. The 3 weirdos were shaking all over, and their faces turned pale. They looked at the top of their heads, the empty castle with no shelter, and the whole person was even more terrified and unable to help themselves. It's horrible. This is simply not human. The 3 people's hearts were tumbling, and their hearts were opened with huge waves. The entire castle, under Liang's slash, was cut to the top of the head. At a glance, I could see the misty gas above the sky. Occasionally, birds flew from here, and the castle was beaten to a huge gap. This is the destructive power brought about by Liang's slash. I'm a little impulsive. I'm not careful, but I can still cause such a terrible attack. It's just that the black sword autumn water has increased my swordsmanship power several times. Chapter 028_Perfect Swordsmanship. NLT, 35 and GT. I'm a little impulsive. I'm not careful, but I can still cause such a terrible attack. It's just that the black sword autumn water has increased my swordsmanship power several times. Liang showed a smile and looked at the sky above his head. The castle has been cut away from the top of the head, and the fog in the sky can be seen from the middle layer. He didn't even think that the slash that broke out inadvertently actually destroyed nearly half of the huge castle. This made him sigh a little. Obviously, this castle is still a very good building. It would be a pity if it was destroyed like this. And Moonlight Moria, who fell to the ground, was subconsciously ignored by him. Moonlight Moria, he's too weak. Could it be that he has entered old age? Liang shook his head and threw the black sword Chushui to the swordsman Longma again. The other side. The swordsman Longma noticed that the black sword Chushui was flying towards his position, and then he came back to his senses and caught the black sword Chushui, still having lingering fears. This is the ultimate swordsmanship. Janao Longma was shocked. Seeing that, Liang hit Moonlight Moria hard with a slash, and even cut off the castle, which filled him with excitement. Undeniable. Liang's swordsmanship is the strongest swordsmanship he has ever seen. Regardless of age, only the strength of swordsmanship is discussed. Undoubtedly, Liang's swordsmanship is, in his opinion, the best swordsmanship in the world. Unexpectedly, Liang, who was holding a famous sword, burst out with such a terrifying slash. This is the level of a great swordsman, you can't go wrong. In an instant, the swordsman Longma even thought of kneeling on the ground and worshipping Liang. He didn't think his actions were wrong. In his understanding, a person who worships swordsmanship, whoever sees Liang's extreme swordsmanship, I am afraid, will feel the same worship as him. Liang's swordsmanship is so perfect that it has reached the ultimate perfection. No matter how you look at it, the swordsman Longma can't see any flaws. This is the shock brought by perfect swordsmanship. For any swordsman, to be able to see such perfect swordsmanship. In this lifetime, you will never regret it. Being able to see such a perfect swordsmanship, it is not in vain for me to be resurrected from death, and I have lived for such a long time. The swordsman Ryoma was full of admiration, thinking so in his heart, he was filled with emotion. He originally thought that his resurrection was a great shame to himself. But after today, after seeing Liang's sword surgery, he will never regret it again, and he will resurrect himself. Even though he appeared in the appearance of neither human nor ghost, he was very excited to appreciate such a perfect swordsmanship. He was deeply immersed in Li Ang's ultimate swordsmanship and could not extricate himself from worship. P.S. 5 more. Ask for flowers, ask for comment votes. Thank you all. And LT, 36 and GT. Chapter 029_Dying Mariah. At this time, swordsman Ryoma stroked his saber, black sword Chushui, and felt endless love in his heart. His statement is, "This is the famous sword used by the world's largest swordsman." Unconsciously, Li Ang also subdued a little fanboy, and, from the country of Wano, the dragon-killing sword and dragon horse who killed the dragon in the sky. In Wano country, Ryoma's reputation is very loud. Even, he is worshipped by countless swordsmen of Wano and enshrined as the goal of his life. But those people in Wano country don't know. The ancestor they worshipped turned to another young man, and they could not wait to be a small follower, so as to seek the opportunity to appreciate such perfect swordsmanship every day. Li Ang's swordsmanship is perfect. This is a fatal attraction for any swordsman. At this time, Li Ang glanced at Hogbak and the others, who were surrounded by Moonlight Moria's body, panic-stricken, and looked at Li Ang from time to time with a strong sense of fear. "Don't look at me like that. If you can save me, even if you do, I won't stop you. What's more, I'm a civilized person. I'm reasonable, you can rest assured." Li Ang smiled lightly, sat on the sofa, and said slowly. Immediately, the three eccentrics rolled their eyes one after another, slandering in their hearts, "If you were reasonable, you wouldn't come here, you would divide half of our territory, and there would be no such battle." But these words, they naturally dare not say it. Li Ang's strength was so strong that even Moonlight Moria was hit hard. Even if the three of them burst out with all their strength and rushed up, they would be dead. But after getting Li Ang's consent, they were slightly relieved. "Hogbark, stop the bleeding for Mr. Mariah." Absalom was in a hurry and said quickly. "I know, I'm trying to stop the bleeding for him, so don't quarrel with me." Hogbako blew a deadly cold sweat on his forehead and shouted angrily. He looked for some therapeutic equipment with both hands, trying to stop the blood of Moonlight Mariah, but there was nothing he could do. This slash, the lethality brought about is too great. At the same time, Hogbak immediately ordered, "Abu Shalom, go to my infirmary and take out all my medical materials. I will stop the bleeding for Mr. Mariah, and it must be sutured by surgery. Otherwise, if the blood is lost too much, the life of Lord Moria will be in danger. Even if I can treat it, it will bring him huge sequelae." After speaking, Absalom immediately walked. Moonlight Moria is still very kind to them, and if they have to treat each other, they will never give up. In particular, Li Ang did not stop them from treating Moonlight Mariah. As Moonlight Mariah's subordinates, they would not even watch their adults die. For their boss, they are still loyal. Aside, Li Ang sat on the sofa, watching the three weirdos get busy. His face was calm, with a smile, holding the red wine, took a sip, very calm. Chapter 029_Dying Moria. And LT, 37 and GT. Li Ang sat on the sofa, watching the three weirdos get busy. His face was calm, with a smile, holding the red wine, took a sip, very calm. From the beginning, he had no idea of killing Moonlight Mariah. Otherwise, the other party couldn't have been clamoring for so long and was still alive. After all, Li Ang will live here for a while from now on. How could he let his old neighbor be killed by himself? The days after this will be very boring. Having a neighbor like Moonlight Moria seems to be not bad. When you have free time, you can pass the time. Don't let him die, he is dead, who will play with me in the future? Li Ang looked at the three of Hogbak and smiled lightly. Heard. The three weirdos were shocked and looked at Li Ang with fear, as if they were looking at a demon. Emotion. The other party didn't stop them from treating Moonlight Mariah because Moonlight Mariah still has the value of playing with the other party in the future. This is simply a devil. In the future, are you still thinking about how to torture Moria-sama? This is too scary. The three weirdos were full of fear for Li Yang, but they were not slow. After Absalom pushed the medical tools over, Hogback immediately began to take measures to treat Moonlight Mariah. Blood has flowed on this clean floor. Even though Moonlight Mariah's physique is very strong, if he loses too much blood, his life will still be in danger. Quick, get the cotton. Hogbuck's busy hands and feet were numb, gritted his teeth, and shouted. Absalom, like a nurse, took out the cotton and handed it to Hogbag. The three weirdos were busy. I can't stop it, Hogbuck, is there any use for you? Seeing Moria's blood draining continuously, Absalom was so anxious that sweat dripped down his forehead, roared, and gritted his teeth. Then what can I do? Hogbuck glanced at Absalom and shouted, or, you come. Okay, you two stop arguing. Hogak, hurry up and treat him. Also, Absalom, don't disturb him and let him treat him quietly. Princess Mononoke Corona had to speak at this time and was furious. ... P.S. Ask for flowers, ask for comment votes. Thank you all. NLT, 38 and GT. Chapter 030 Master of Medicine. The three weirdos worked together to heal Moonlight Mariah. However, because the destructive power of Li Yang's slash just now was so terrifying, even Moria's cells and tissues were destroyed, and the blood could not be contained and kept flowing. The blood on the ground became more and more prominent. Moonlight Mariah was already unconscious, and her long face was pale. Even if it is a monster, the loss of blood can still make the monster fall into death. Can't stop, what's going on? Hogbuck hurriedly said. Why can't you stop? Absalom asked in a low voice. I don't know, it seems that there is still some power left in Lord Moria's wound, which is constantly destroying his wound and making the wound bigger and bigger. Hogbuck pondered for a moment, and said with a face full of astonishment. He has been a doctor for a long time. Moreover, his medical skills are very high. Therefore, he has treated many individuals in the past, and he has also attracted much attention, and has been worshipped and respected by countless people. Although he is personally greedy for money, it is undeniable that his medical skills are very strong. Otherwise, he doesn't even have the capital to be greedy for money. When he saw Moonlight Mariah's wound, he was shocked. This was the first time in his history that he had seen such a strange wound. Blood, unstoppable overflow. The area of the wound continued to spread, causing Moonlight Mariah's injury to become heavier. After this slash, the remaining power will remain in the human body to destroy the body. Such an attack is too terrifying. Hogbuck was in a cold sweat, and out of the corner of his eye glanced at Li Yang sitting on the sofa, and the corners of his mouth trembled in horror. The person who caused such an injury was Li Yang. This made his fear of Li Yang skyrocket. Hogback, here. Absalom looked a little absent-minded at Hogbag, and hurriedly reminded. I know. Hogbuck came back to his senses. With a lingering fear, he turned his eyes back and focused on Moonlight Mariah. Time flies by. 3 minutes later. The blood had spread to the sofa where Li Yang was sitting. If Moonlight Mariah was not a monster, but an ordinary person, he would have already died completely due to excessive blood loss. But his tyrannical physique gave him tenacious vitality. However, if he can't stop the loss of blood, he will gradually step into the gate of hell with half a foot, and it is only a matter of time before he will die. What to do? Hogbuck's lips trembled, completely lost in thought. In these 3 minutes, he tried all kinds of methods, but he couldn't stop the blood of Moonlight Mariah, because there was still a trace of power aftermath at the location of the wound. At first, it was easy to stop the blood, but in less than a second, the cells were destroyed by the wound. Chapter 030 Master of Medicine. NLT, 39 and GT. At first, it was easy to stop the blood, but in less than a second, the cells were destroyed by the wound. After destruction, the ability of cells to heal is significantly slower. In this way, Hogbok couldn't even think of a way to effectively curb Moonlight Moria's blood loss. He could only watch helplessly, as Moonlight Moria's blood became more and more, flowing on the floor. The smell of blood in the air became more and more intense. It's not the way to go on like this. Perona also seemed very anxious, said. I know, but what can I do? Hogbok shouted impatiently. Absalom took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Is there no way? Can't even suture the wound. Blood is constantly flowing, so what if I can sew it up? I still can't make the cells and tissues re-heal, and it's even more impossible to reconnect the skin. Hogbok shook his head and said bluntly. At this time, blind stitching is meaningless. The most important thing is to stop the loss of blood. If the blood cannot be stopped, then Moonlight Moria will die. This is the truth. At this time, they didn't even have time to take care of Liang, who was on the side. They even forgot Liang, the culprit, and focused on Moonlight Moria's injury. On the sofa, Liang was very comfortable, drinking red wine, looking at the helpless picture of the three weirdos, shook his head, and said lightly, "Let me do it, seeing how you look, I know there is nothing you can do." As soon as the words came out, the audience fell silent. Even Hogbok, holding the blood-stained cotton in his hand, couldn't help but turn his head. The three of them unanimously looked at Liang, their faces full of astonishment. Are you here? You know, Hogbok is a genius surgeon. What even he can't do, could Liang have a way? Do not make jokes. In their hearts, the three did not believe that Liang could cure Moonlight Moria. Apart from me, is there anything you can do? Get out of the way. Liang waved his hand casually, stood up from the sofa, and approached the seriously injured Moonlight Moria step by step. The three weirdos were tense, their lips trembling, and they were dominated by fear. Although they didn't believe Liang would be able to do anything in their hearts, they still did not dare to say a word under the control of the opponent's terrifying strength. At the same time, Liang just came to Moonlight Moria's side. Sure enough, it didn't surprise him. The sound of the system appeared. Congratulations to the host, open the modifier, the medical value is plus 999,999. Comprehend come back to life, breakthrough novice, breakthrough entry, breakthrough proficiency, breakthrough master, breakthrough master. ... P.S. Ask for flowers, ask for comments. Thank you. NLT, 40 and GT. Chapter 031 _ medical skills are too high is also a kind of helplessness. A wave of medical skills poured into Liang's mind. At the same time, the system brought him the ultimate medical skills. All kinds of treatment plans. After turning around in his head and modifying the medical skill value, he is already an out-and-out medical master. The medical skills currently possessed by Liang are countless times stronger than those of the genius surgeon Hogbok. Hogbok talks about medical skills in front of the current Liang, and is not even worthy of the qualification to carry shoes. You, don't mess around. Hogbok's lips trembled, looking at Liang, and said in a low voice. Treating patients indiscriminately will accelerate the time to death of patients. Especially in this situation where the wound cannot be contained, random treatment may touch the artery of Moonlight Moria, making the blood flow even more terrifying, and the speed of death will be accelerated. In the current situation, even Hogbok doesn't think he has a better way to treat it, and he doesn't dare to act rashly. Therefore, in his opinion, Liang, a layman, is even less likely to treat Moonlight Moria. Just because Liang's terrifying strength is here, he doesn't dare to speak at will. The rest of Absalom didn't say a word, nervously facing a prehistoric monster. Perona slumped on the ground, her beautiful big eyes were full of fear, her red lips were trembling, and she didn't dare to say a word. The three weirdos, in front of Liang, are like three well-behaved kittens. This is simply too far from what they were rumored to be. However, this is still because of Liang's strength, the influence brought. Get out of the way. Liang's mouth moved slightly, and he said lightly, "If you want to let him die, then I naturally don't need to treat him. If you don't want him to die, then get out of the way and let me come." Are you serious?" Hogbuk looked at Liang suspiciously, a little nervous, and asked. "What am I lying to you for? There's no need. Besides, what's the benefit of me lying to you? If it's just to kill him, I don't need to be so troublesome. If I want to kill now, you can't stop it." The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly raised, and he smiled lightly. "Really? He is going to kill here, and no one can stop him. The strongest person here is Moonlight Mariah, but in front of him, he can't even block a move, let alone his subordinates. Even if the three weirdos rushed up, they would only die at Liang's hands." "Good." Perona's red lips parted slightly and took the initiative to walk aside. Absalom also stepped aside. "Are you serious?" Hogbuk looked at the two of them, his face full of astonishment. "Aren't you afraid that he will make Lord Moria die faster? He is a layman. Do you have a solution?" Perona took a deep look at Hogbuk and said. "If not, get out of the way." Chapter 031 medical skills are too high is also a kind of helplessness. "If not, get out of the way," Absalom said slowly with a helpless expression on his face. Immediately, Hogbuk's face froze, and he could only helplessly shake his head and sigh, gradually moving away. "I said I could save him, but of course I wouldn't break my promise." Liang glanced at the three of them and said lightly. Immediately, he walked to Moonlight Mariah's side, and saw that the wound of the other party was still bleeding, and the wound could not be healed. Even if it was sutured, it would be meaningless. "Bring the medical supplies." Liang glanced at Absalom, and the other party obeyed the instructions, pushed the iron cart of medical supplies, and moved to Liang's side, waiting for dispatch. Children's play, children's play. Hogbuk stood aside and was secretly anxious, watching Liang prepare for treatment, his whole heart lifted. A layman, treating patients. It's not child's play, what is it? What's more, this is a wound that even Hogbuk himself can't treat. What does a layman know? In the sight of everyone, Liang held the cotton in his left hand, absorbed the blood a little, and revealed the full picture of the wound inside. A slash, indeed, even Moria's entire chest pierced. Fortunately, he didn't hit his heart, otherwise he would have died on the spot. Under his monster-like physique, the tenacious vitality prevented him from dying immediately. Otherwise, if ordinary people are attacked like this, I am afraid that they will leave this world on the spot. Liang put his hands on Moria's wound, before he started, as if he was lost in thought. Sure enough, there's no way, a layman is a layman. Hogbuk's eyes twinkled, thinking so in his heart. Seeing Liang stiffen, he thought that the other party should have nothing to do. Is there no way? We are too hopeful. Perona and Absalom shook their heads in frustration and sighed. Let a culprit come to treat Moonlight Mariah, and their heads are simply kicked by a donkey, so they hold a glimmer of hope. However, they didn't know that Liang stopped his hands because he had too much knowledge in his head. Seeing Moonlight Mariah's wound, Liang had countless treatment plans in his head, making him unable to choose. Which treatment plan should I choose? The medical skills are too superb, and it is also a kind of helplessness. When treating patients, there are countless ways to cure each other, but because there are too many treatment options, people can't choose at all. P.S. 3 more flowers, please comment. Thank you. And LT, 42 and GT. Chapter 032 Come Back to Life. Aside. The swordsman Longma also approached, looking at Liang suspiciously. Could it be that adults still know medical skills? It's also horrible. Almighty genius. Swordsmanship is already so superb, and now, even medical skills are slightly involved. My lord, it's just a matter of time for my generation to look up to. Swordsman Longma's admiration for Liang was like a surging river, flowing endlessly. He has already blindly worshipped Liang. Because of his perfect swordsmanship, he was convinced of Li Ang's words. At this moment, Li Ang held cotton in his left hand, and a small iron pliers for suture in his right hand, holding the iron needle, and looked at Moonlight Mariah's wound with a calm face. There are too many ways to treat, but he still screamed a lot for the first time, and used the simplest and most practical way to treat Moonlight Mariah. Are you going to start? The corners of Hogbuck's mouth moved slightly, and his face showed a bit of suspicion. He wasn't sure whether Li Ang could really treat Moonlight Mariah well. But in his heart, he would never think that Li Ang had the possibility of having no choice but to have Moonlight Mariah. There is a greater possibility that the death of Moonlight Mariah will be accelerated due to the rupture of the wound. A layman, how to deal with it? What hope do I have? It's obviously impossible. Perona scratched her smooth hair, tangled in her heart. On the one hand, she had some expectations that Li Ang could cure Moonlight Mariah, but rationally, she did not think that Li Ang could cure Moonlight Mariah. It was this conflict in her heart that made her pretty face bitter. Li Ang stood beside Moonlight Mariah, half squatting. Cotton soaked up the blood from the wound, revealing the wound, but then, the blood spilled out again. There is no way. There is still a little power left in the wound, which is destroying the cells. Therefore, the blood cannot be stopped, even if it is me, there is no way. Hogbuck stood aside, shaking his head and thinking with a sigh. He couldn't heal the wound, let alone believe that Li Ang could do it. But the next scene made him feel like a lightning strike. I see. Li Ang directly used the suture method to style the wound. The slender iron needle penetrated the skin, and with lines, the blood hole about the size of a fist was forcibly pulled on the skin and joined together. The method can be said to be very domineering, and the consequences are not considered at all. Crazy. Hogbuck was shocked and lost his voice. Bring the scissors here. Li Ang's face was calm and unmoved. Absalom acted as an assistant on the side, obeying Li Ang's instructions, and quickly took the scissors. Click. The whole process takes less than a few minutes. Li Ang had already sutured Moonlight Mariah's wound, put cotton on the wound, and stood up directly. Chapter 032 _ Come Back to Life. NLT, 43 and GT. Li Ang had already sutured Moonlight Mariah's wound, put cotton on the wound, and stood up directly. No, the wound is still bleeding. Absalom said quickly. I guessed it. Hogbuck shook his head secretly and said. However, after seeing Li Ang's method of suturing the wound just now, he was still shocked. This technique, speed and accuracy, just like a top surgeon. Even he himself thinks he can't do it to such an extent. In other words, Li Ang in front of him is obviously not a layman. He has always been wrong. However, this medical skill seems to be higher than me. Hogbuck's throat was dry, and looking at Li Ang's eyes, he gradually became a little horrified. Not only is his strength so terrifying, but his medical skills are even more brilliant than him. How could there be such a terrifying monster in this world? This made him, who thought he was a genius, felt ashamed when he stood in front of Li Ang. What will he do next? Hogbuck looked at Li Ang with a fiery face. He found that he became more and more curious about how Li Ang would deal with the wound next. Known as a genius surgeon in surgery, when he saw someone like Li Ang with extreme medical skills, he naturally had the idea of chasing him. It turns out that there are people outside people, and there are days outside the sky. In the past, he thought he was a genius, but after seeing Li Ang, he realized that his so-called genius was just a frog at the bottom of the well. At this time, Li Ang looked at Moonlight Mariah's still unhealed wound, expressionless, picked up the medical supplies, and reconciled. The crowd was silent and silent. 10 minutes later, Li Ang's hands were covered with blood. Looking at Moonlight Mariah's wound that had healed, the corners of his mouth curled slightly. Fortunately, it really succeeded. I thought how difficult it was. Moonlight Mariah's huge wound has been stitched up. Moreover, the blood has stopped and no longer overflows. At least, now he is out of danger. It only takes time to rest and he can recover as before, but it will leave some scars on the wound, and it will not bring him follow-up sequelae. This shows Li Yang's brilliant medical skills. If it were another person, I'm afraid I can only watch the scene where Moonlight Moria was unable to stop the bleeding and finally died because of excessive blood loss. Perona and Absalom looked at each other in shock. However, it was Hogbuck on the side that his mood fluctuated the most. Just now, Li Yang's method of treating Moonlight Moria, he had never seen before, and finally stopping the bleeding wound was done in a way he had never thought of. This is, simply, the technique of bringing back the dead. Hogbuck's lips trembled, and he was deeply shocked by Li Yang's superb medical skills. P.S. 4 shifts, ask for flowers. Ask for comments. Thank you. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 033 Sir, are you still short of chores? Li Yang's method of treating Moonlight Moria just now, that image has been lingering in Hogbuck's head and cannot be erased. This kind of clever medical technique was something he had never thought of before. I originally thought that Li Yang was a layman. Looking at it now, what a layman, this is a living genius doctor. As the saying goes, peers know the depths. As a genius doctor, after seeing Li Yang's treatment method, it became even more obvious that Hogbuck was a whimsical treatment method. But the end result? Undoubtedly, Li Yang succeeded. It is precisely because of Li Yang's success that Hogbuck's whole person is like a lightning strike, dumbfounded. It turned out that he had always been too naive. This injury can be treated like this. He was suddenly enlightened, and when he saw Li Yang's medical treatment, it seemed as if another brand new door had been opened for him. I am a layman. The corners of Hogbuck's mouth moved slightly, and he muttered to himself. It was only at this moment that he realized how far apart Li Yang was from him. It was as if Li Yang was standing at the top of the pyramid. And he, although still hovering at the waist of the pyramid, has never been able to take another step forward. Because of the medical skills shown by Li Yang today, Hogbuck has another direction to move forward again, making him love medical skills once again. Li Yang didn't know that he only showed a medical skill, which made Hogbuck deeply impressed. Even Hogbuck has vaguely regarded Li Yang as a living genius doctor. This was completely unpredictable by Li Yang. He was just ordinary, taking a simple treatment plan. There are countless kinds of such plans in his head, and he doesn't think there is any surprise. But in Hogbuck's eyes, this kind of plan opened a new door for him. Li Yang now has the ultimate medical skills. Naturally, he will not think that there is anything wrong with these plans. He will only think that this is just a normal thing. Lord Moria seems to be out of danger. Absalom stood beside Moonlight Moria, felt the pulse of the other party, and blurted out. Until now, the three of them were unable to break free from the shock brought by Li Yang. But one thing is for sure. Moonlight Moria is no longer in danger. All of this was brought about by Li Yang's brilliant medical skills. If you rely on Hogbuck, I am afraid that Moonlight Moria has completely died. Obviously, Perona and Absalom both knew it well. Chapter 033 Sir, are you still short of chores? And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. And LT, 45 and GT. Obviously, Perona and Absalom both knew it well. If compared to medical skills, Hogbuck, who is known as a genius doctor, is not even qualified to give Li Yang his shoes. The two are not of the same level at all. But Li Yang is so young, how can he possess such terrifying medical skills and swordsmanship? There really are such monsters in this world. God, it's so unfair. Absalom was full of helplessness and sighed. Li Yang, a 20-year-old young man, not only can do one blow to hit Moria hard, but also has the technique to bring Moria back to life and heal Moria's wounds again. Absalom couldn't understand in his heart, what else could not be done by Li Yang in front of him. Sure enough, our idols are naturally different. The swordsman Ryoma was very emotional and thought so. Li Ang has become his idol all his life. Not only is he superb in swordsmanship, but also in medicine. This is, the people of heaven. At least, that's what they had in mind. But they don't know that Li Ang has a modification system in his body. He can modify any data, and he can easily reach the top of a certain field. With ease, he can do things that others can't do in a lifetime. Medicine, fencing. Who would have thought that Li Ang knew nothing before this? But modifying the system gave him the ultimate medical skills in swordsmanship. Any problem, for Li Ang, is a very simple matter. As long as there is a modification system, what kind of data do you want to modify? Medicine, fencing. It can be modified to the extreme at will. In the blink of an eye, Li Ang can transcend the things that countless people have worked hard for in a lifetime, but cannot do. At this moment, Hogbok was completely impressed by Li Ang's medical skills, and his face was full of excitement, which was completely different from the previous expression. When he had never seen Li Ang's medical skills, he heard Li Ang's proposal to treat Moonlight Moria, and his face was full of disdain and contempt. But now, when Li Ang really did it, what was left in his heart was deep worship. Sir. Hogbako completely disregarded his dignity, looked at Li Ang, smiled apologetically, and said quickly, "Are you still short of a chorus boy? I can do a lot of things for you without any compensation. ... P.S. 5 more. Ask for flowers. Ask for comments. Thank you. NLT, 46 and GT. Chapter 034 convinced a little fanboy again. Nani? Perona and Absalom looked strangely at Hogbok suspiciously. Who said just now that the other party was a layman? Why at this moment, he actually took the initiative to flatter the other party. Can I still speak well and ask for a face? At this time, Hogbok's fat body, with a wretched smile, hurriedly said, "Sir, I know a lot of things. I can perform some surgical operations. Otherwise, let me do errands with you, what do you think? Also, I still have a lot of treasures. I can give them to you, just to be by your side and do something for you." After he finished speaking, Hogbok was looking at Li Ang with a look of admiration on his face, looking forward to it. After Li Ang's treatment just now, he was completely shocked. I don't know if a certain tendon is in the wrong line, but now his mind is full of Li Ang's superb medical skills, which makes him want to continue learning. No need. Li Ang glanced at Hogbok's chubby figure and said bluntly. If he really lacks a chorus, then he would rather find a cute girl like Perona than someone who looks disgusting like Hogbok. My lord, I really know a lot of things. Hogbok was in a hurry and said quickly. All the honors he has won in his life have been revealed. But it fell into Li Ang's ear, and it was the same sentence, no need. Hearing this, Hogbok's whole person was like a deflated balloon, his face full of distress and sighing. Hogbok, is it worth it, you guy? Absalom came to Hogbok and asked in a low voice. In his cognition, Hogbok is an out-and-out genius doctor. Is it really worth it to be so euphemistically asking for completeness and praying to be a younger brother of the other party? At least, Absalom he couldn't understand. You know the shit. Hogbok held Absalom viciously and said, Your Excellency has already stood at the highest level in the field of medicine. It's my honor to be by his side. Is he really that good? Absalom admitted that Li Ang was able to treat Moonlight Moria, which was a very shocking thing to him. However, what he couldn't understand was that Li Ang's medical skills were really strong enough to make Hogbok admire him so much. You know, this guy Hogbok is very arrogant. No one could convince him, but Li Ang's appearance made Hogbok's arrogant mind go thousands of miles away. Let me tell you so. Hogbok took a deep breath, looked at Li Ang's back, and said solemnly, as long as someone is injured in this world, and this person didn't die on the spot, this adult can pull him back from the gate of hell. You know me, mean. Chapter 034 I convinced a little fanboy again. NLT, 47 and GT. Hogbok took a deep breath, looked at Li Ang's back, and said solemnly, as long as someone is injured in this world, and this person didn't die on the spot, this adult can pull him back from the gate of hell. You know me, mean. I understand, I understand. Absalom's lips trembled, and he was taken in by Hogbach's words. Immediately, he turned around and looked at Li Ang's back, unable to believe it. It seems that the other party's medical skills are already superb to this level. That is to say, people who are not dead will be cured as long as they are in the hands of the other party. This is the living magician. It's no wonder that this guy Hogarth is so enthusiastic. It turns out that this adult's medical skills have reached this level. Also, the arrogant guy, Janao Longma, has been convinced. That is to say, the swordsmanship of this adult has also reached a very unfathomable level. Let the sword masters and horses have a feeling of admiration. My God, this is not a human anymore, it's a humanoid monster. One person is proficient in so many fields, and he is still standing on the highest peak of the field. Absalom was stunned by Li Ang, dumbfounded, and his heart was tumbling. Being able to stand at the pinnacle of the field of medicine and swordsmanship at such an age already shows Li Ang's terrifying talent. How are you, surprised? Hogbach glanced at Absalom and said with a half-smile, now, can you understand why I should follow this lord? Understood. Absalom nodded solemnly, and then pulled away from the shop. Immediately after, he stepped forward, came to Li Ang, and said sincerely, Sir, are you still short of chores around you? I can be a bull and a horse for you. Fuck. Hogbach was stunned, looking at Absalom's actions. He murmured in his heart, okay you damned fellow, you are actually one step ahead of me. Immediately, not wanting to be left behind, Hogbach quickly walked up to Li Ang with a sincere expression on his face. He hoped, Sir, I can help you with a lot of trivial matters. My lord, I can too. Absalom's pupils shrank, staring at Hogbach, and said quickly, My lord, what Absalom can do, I can do, and what he can't do, I can do too. You fart. Could it be that you can save people? Do you know medical skills? You're a bastard who doesn't know anything, and you still want to snatch me. Come on. Well, I really won't. But, will you be invisible? Abu Shalom, you have to compete with me, don't you? So what? My lord, I'm much more useful than this guy Hogbach. Quote. P.S. Ask for flowers. Ask for comments. Thank you all the guests. NLT, 48 and GT. Chapter 035_Moria stunned. Seeing the two little villains in front of him, he actually flattered unexpectedly. This made Li Ang a little confused. However, it is quite comfortable to be flattered by these two little villains. All kinds of flattery made Li Ang feel a little off. Wait. Li Ang stretched out his hand, stopped the two of them, and said, I don't need two big men to do chores. My lord, I can be a woman. Absalom rolled his eyes and said with a wretched smile. Well. Li Ang was stunned, but he didn't expect that Absalom, a tiger-headed man, would flatter him one after another without stopping. Even, the other party also proposed, want, women's clothes. Thinking of this, Li Ang almost spit out the food from last night. A blue vein appeared on his forehead, the corner of his mouth moved slightly, and he spit out a word, go away. Damn it, Absalom, you bloody bastard, you can do anything, dare to say anything. Hogbach was also startled by the other party's words, and immediately, he also showed a smile and said, Sir, in fact, I can too. You two, get out, don't let me use my sword. Li Ang's eyes were icy cold without any emotion. Immediately, the two of them shivered and didn't dare to speak anymore. For fear of angering Li Ang, they were cut down by a sword. If this is hit by the opponent's slash, they don't have the terrifying physical quality of Moonlight Moria, I'm afraid they will be killed on the spot. Yes. The two nodded quickly, not daring to speak again. Aside. Perona looked at her companion, she was a little stunned when she saw the wind and the rudder. Her red lips were slightly open, and she was speechless. Is this changing too fast? Just now, everyone was clearly still the enemy. Her little heart could hardly bear such a huge change. The other side. Moonlight Mariah, who fell to the ground, looked very lonely. He was in a coma, yet he didn't know that his own subordinates were silent, smiling at his enemy, and even looking forward to becoming the opponent's younger brother. In darkness, Moonlight Mariah seemed to see a ray of light. He moved his fingertips slightly, slowly opened his eyes, and saw the pierced ceiling. And, the heavy fog in the sky obscured his vision. Cough cough. Moonlight Mariah coughed lightly and looked around with difficulty. The injury was only a preliminary healing, and it could not be completely healed. It was because of his monster-like physique that he was able to wake up in such a short period of time. To be an ordinary person, do not lie down for a month, want to open your eyes. Dreaming 2. Chapter 035_Moria stunned by gas, NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 49 NGT. To be an ordinary person, do not lie down for a month, want to open your eyes. Dreaming 2. Am I not dead? Moonlight Mariah wanted to speak, but found that her throat rolled and she couldn't make a sound. He was so weak that he didn't even have the strength to speak. But he can already be sure that he is not dead. There were bursts of voices in his ears, which made Yugong Mariah understand that he was actually rescued by Liang, which made him feel mixed. It was Liang who killed him, and it was Liang who saved him. However, he had a very clear understanding of Liang's strength. This is a scary monster. It's not a monster that he can shake, so even if he recovers from the injury, he won't dare to provoke Liang again. At this moment, Moonlight Mariah had already retreated in his heart. Facing a terrifying enemy like Liang, he couldn't accept it. He didn't want to experience the feeling of dying a second time. At the same time, he heard the voices of Absalom and Hogbuck. My lord, I'm really good at work, much more useful than Hogbuck. You go away, obviously I came first, my lord, I just want to help you with chores, and don't expect anything else. Me too, my lord, I just want to follow you around and help you. Quote. The conversation between the two drifted into Moonlight Mariah's ears without a single word. His eyes were wide and bloodshot, his lips were trembling, and his whole face was full of anger. These two guys. In Moonlight Mariah's heart, he scolded Absalom and Hogbako for the 18th generation of his ancestors, and his whole heart was full of anger. The two of them actually respected the enemy so much when he fell. Amid the anger, the wound flared again, leaving him feeling a tingling pain. The heart-piercing pain is piercing through my heart. But, strangely, no one noticed Moonlight Mariah's movements. I see. Under the words of Absalom and Hogbark, Moonlight Mariah was too angry and caused the wound to flare up. The severe pain made him lose consciousness, his eyes were white, and he fainted. No one found out until he fainted. Emotion. The eldest of the three monsters, Moonlight Mariah has woken up. It's just because no one of them found out, and there are two other people who are constantly flattering Liang. Moonlight Mariah suddenly burst into anger, touched the wound, and sent a tingling pain. Under his unbearable tolerance, he fainted again. Poor Moonlight Mariah, even waking up and fainting, no one noticed from beginning to end. P.S. Ask for flowers. NLT, 50 and GT. Chapter 036_ Who agrees and who disagrees. Okay, you two. Perona's pretty face showed a bit of impatience and said, You are not ashamed, but I am also ashamed. Of course you are not ashamed. The adults asked you to be a maid. You must not be nervous. We are different. Hogbak glanced at Perona and said with some jealousy. That's right, woman. Absalom also has some taste, said. You too. Perona held her forehead, always feeling that her IQ was forcibly lowered. But then again, it seems pretty good to be the maid of this lord. Bah bah bah. How am I still happy? But this lord is really attractive. Not only does he possess such terrifying swordsmanship, but even his medical skills are so brilliant. I am moved, and it is normal. No, why am I so moved? This must be fake. Perona's pretty face became a little red, floating in the air, covering her face. She was shy. Seeing Perona's appearance, Absalom and Hogbark looked at each other and said in unison, "Look, woman, turning your face is faster than turning a book." The three monsters are indeed the three monsters. By now, their thoughts are completely different from normal people. But Li Ang didn't care too much. He walked to Moonlight Mariah, kicked him with his foot, and said, "Moonlight Mariah, it's time to wake up. With your monster's body, this injury is nothing." Well. Moonlight Moria woke up again, opened her eyes, and looked around in confusion. In an instant, he came back to his senses and remembered what happened before. Just as he was about to look at Absalom angrily, the first person he saw was Li Ang standing in front of him. You. Moonlight Moria was a little frightened, her voice slightly hoarse, said. "Since I wake up, then I will repeat the conditions I mentioned just now. You must listen carefully. If there is a violation, next time, my sword will not deviate from your heart." Li Ang looked at Moonlight Moria and smiled meaningfully. Heard. Moonlight Moria was a little timid, and always felt that her heart seemed to be getting colder and colder. He was hit by Li Ang's slash, and he knew very well the destructive power of Li Ang's slash. Chapter 036 _ Who agrees and who disagrees. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. He was hit by Li Ang's slash, and he knew very well the destructive power of Li Ang's slash. Not only was his own body pierced, but even the huge castle was chopped off with a large strip of smooth horizontal blows. You say. Moonlight Moria took a deep breath and said nervously. The first point, I want half the territory of the Dreadbark. This is the condition I have put forward from the beginning. The second point, such a large site, I need some managers. Among them, Perona and Janao Longma are temporarily arranged on my site and obey my dispatch. The third point is that no one can easily enter my site. Violators will be beheaded. Fourth point, I need to build a castle, and you all operate it. What I want to see is an exquisite castle, not a waste house that cuts corners. That's all for now. I'll think about it later and will continue to add. Li Ang's face was calm. He sat on the sofa and said slowly. On the floor, the blood has gradually dried up. All of them came from the blood of Moonlight Moria, almost covering the entire hall. With so much blood, ordinary people would have already died. But the monster Moonlight Moria was naturally unusual. Not only did he not die, on the contrary, he was still recovering very quickly, as if he was nothing. Different physique lineages naturally bring different potentials. Moonlight Moria's own racial lineage is very extraordinary, and the healing power is naturally countless times stronger than that of ordinary humans. Li Ang's slash, the injury caused by him, after he has been treated, Moonlight Moria's wound has gradually healed. This is the benefit of physique. Even if you encounter a terrifying injury, once treated, your body will recover quickly and there will be no hidden dangers. After Li Ang finished speaking, no one said a word. Perona, Absalom, and Hogbark didn't dare to say a word. In this case, they didn't even have the right to speak. Well then, the above are the conditions I want to say. Li Ang looked at Moonlight Moria, and glanced at the three weirdos. He slowly lowered his hands and asked indifferently, Next, it's time for you to express your views. Excuse me, among you, who agrees and who disagrees? The empty hall was silent. The pressure brought by Li Ang made them unable to breathe. Although there were no threatening words, no one dared to refute it either. The destructive power brought by Li Ang's slash just now is still vivid in his mind. The gap in the ceiling was caused by a slash from Li Yang. T.S. Ask for flowers. Chapter 037_Moria gives in. The huge castle, the ceiling above the head, has about 4 or 5 floors, all of which were broken by Li Yang's slash. The fog outside can be seen from the inside. Even though it is daytime, because of the strange environment in the magic triangle, it still looks very gloomy. Inside the castle. Empty hall. Li Yang sat on the sofa, his face was calm, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he looked at everyone present. Just after he finished speaking, whether it was Moonlight Maria or the 3 weirdos, they all fell into silence and remained silent. Moonlight Maria, the only one who has the right to speak, does not dare to be the same as before, and has a bad attitude towards Li Yang. Now before him, there is only one possibility. If he wants to die, naturally everything need not be said. If he wanted to survive, he had to agree to Li Yang's conditions. Cough cough. Moonlight Maria kowtowed, and there was a trace of blood on the corner of her mouth. Although the wound has healed, it cannot be restored to its original state within a period of time. It's just that relatively speaking, he is a little better than the situation in which he was seriously injured and critically injured. Aside. Absalom and Hogback were silent and did not speak. Perona floated in the air, the atmosphere did not dare to breathe heavily, her beautiful big eyes turned around, looking at Li Yang and Moonlight Maria, her red lips were slightly parted, and she was speechless for a while. Are Li Yang's conditions excessive? Excessive, of course, and still quite excessive. But can they refuse? Unless they want to die. If you don't want to die, you can only agree to Li Yang's conditions, otherwise no one here can stop his destructive power. Even Yugong Moria, one of the 7 Marshalseas under the king, was hit hard by Li Yang, and they were completely determined to fight tenaciously in their hearts. When the difference in strength is too great, they are still obsessed with it. This is not bravery, but a reckless act. It is just to die, and there is no other use. Can I make one condition? Moonlight Maria took a deep breath and her tone became calm. He looked at Li Yang with solemn eyes, with a look of anticipation. Say. Li Yang showed a touch of interest and smiled lightly. As far as you can help, without violating your own principles, do one thing for me. Moonlight Maria thought for a moment and said quickly. After he finished speaking, he felt a little nervous. After all, now he is not qualified to negotiate with Li Yang. One thing, in exchange for a huge site, speaking, I still made money. Besides, I am a civilized person, and it is impossible to do those robbers. Then I will accept your condition. Remember, we are a normal transaction, not me grabbing your territory. Li Yang said slowly with a smile on his face. Everything is of my own accord. Chapter 037_Moria surrendered. Everything is of my own accord. Moonlight Maria said with a trace of bitterness on the corner of her mouth. But then again, he didn't think he was at a disadvantage. The area of the dread bark is so huge that it looks like an island. Therefore, the extra area is not of much use to him in fact. Moreover, this ship is too old and has been silent for too long, and I don't know if it still has the ability to sail. Besides. What's more, Moonlight Maria's own heart has gradually grown old, and it is no longer as energetic as before. Sending him to the New World now will cost him his own life. The magic triangle of the Great Waterway is the place where Moonlight Maria takes care of her. If nothing else, he will survive here forever. Of course. Occasionally dreaming and thinking about being able to step into a new world is also a beautiful thing for Moonlight Maria itself. But really let him go to the new world, he will not have such a good mentality. And a terrifying powerhouse like Li Yang promised to do one thing for him. This condition is quite expensive. But not everyone can have such a condition. Deal. Li Yang stood up from the sofa and said with a smile. Deal. Moonlight Maria's face was still pale and bloodless, and nodded. In the future, use the Devil's Forest as the dividing line. The site on the left is mine, and the site on the right is yours. Does my area have a name? Li Ang asked with a smile. Yes. Moonlight Moria's eyes fell into thought, as if recalling the past days, and said slowly, it is called the Dark Lord, and the environment inside is more gloomy and quiet than mine. As long as it's quiet enough, that's fine. Li Ang showed a smile and said bluntly. As for Perona, I seek her own opinion. Moonlight Moria looked at Perona and asked, what do you think? Yeah. Perona's pretty face was a little shy and nodded. It seems that she is willing to follow you. Moonlight Moria said with a wry smile on the corner of her mouth. See. Next to him, Absalom and Hogbark were biting their collars, like a resentful woman, looking at Perona with resentment on their faces, eager to take their place. If they can follow Li Ang, the two of them are naturally willing to follow Li Ang. But they don't have the opportunity of Perona, even if they are stalking, Li Ang will not accept them as younger brothers. P.S. Ask for flowers. Chapter 038 settling in the magic triangle open black lens bracket for flowers. Close black lens bracket. Also, Swordsman Ryoma. Moonlight Moria turned to look at Ryoma's position and whispered, I know your answer just by looking at you. It has always been your biggest dream to follow someone with superb swordsmanship. Thank you. The swordsman Ryoma lowered his head and cupped his hands. Without you, I can continue to manufacture. What do I have to lose? Moonlight Moria became more cheerful, laughed loudly, and said. I don't know if it's because he just walked out of the gate of hell, his character has become a little clearer. Originally, he had a lifeless appearance, as if everyone owed him millions of berry. You've changed quite a bit. Li Ang glanced at Moonlight Moria and said with a smile, could it be that because of my slash just now, you were enlightened? In this way, I am still a hero. Li Ang, the second man who escaped from the advanced city, deserves his reputation. Moonlight Moria took a deep look at Li Ang and said. At first, he underestimated each other. But after these things, he had to be careful. Li Ang's strength was so terrifying that he was filled with fear. If possible, he would never want to be Li Ang's enemy in his entire life. Facing the terrible slash, it would cost him his life. Fortunately, the other party hadn't killed the killer, otherwise he would have died in Wangquan just now. From today, we are neighbors, please advise. Li Ang said with a smile. Neighbor, that's an unfamiliar word. Moonlight Moria didn't know whether to be excited or aggrieved. Anyway, the fact that Li Ang settled in the terror bark has become a fact. Even he is powerless to change this fact. But in the same way, Li Ang here also gave Moonlight Moria some confidence. If there are some pirates who don't have long eyes to come here to make a fortune, it happens that they are those pirates that Moonlight Moria can't shake. At this time, you can ask Li Ang to take action. Relatively speaking, there are advantages and disadvantages, and it is not all his losses. Go away. Li Ang took a last look at the fallen Moonlight Moria, waved his hand, and said. He turned around and walked directly into the dim corridor ahead. At the same time, the swordsman Ryoma and Perona also announced their departure from here, followed Li Ang's back, gradually left the castle step by step, and rushed to Li Ang's territory. Watching Li Ang leave, Moonlight Moria was full of emotion, shook his head and sighed, the times have changed, and I can't see it through. Lord Moria said it very well. Absalom and Hogback hurriedly laughed and flattered. You too. Immediately, Moonlight Moria's forehead burst into blue veins, staring at the two of them, roaring, just now, it was the two of you who rebelled for the first time. Do you think I didn't hear your flattering words? Ah! The two were stunned and quickly explained. Chapter 038 settling in the magic triangle open black lens bracket for flowers. And GT, page 1/2 please click the next page to continue reading. The two were stunned and quickly explained. Lord Moria, that was a misunderstanding. No, we saw that the other party was too strong. and we plan to be polite and seek perfection so that you could survive. If we still anger the other party, it would be troublesome." The two of them blushed and explained. Heard. Moonlight Moria's face turned slightly, although he didn't think the other party was telling the truth. But at least, that's what it sounds like on the surface, and that's enough. "I solemnly announce something to you." Moonlight Moria's face became serious and said, "From now on, you must not step into his territory without permission. Otherwise, even me, I can't save you. Please rest assured, Lord Moria, we will never step into his territory." Absalom and Hogbark nodded quickly and said solemnly. Li Ang's terrifying strength, the two of them are naturally well aware of it. The other party's temper was also a little weird. He could kill Moonlight Maria, but he didn't do it. Instead, he turned his head and pulled the dying Moonlight Maria back from the brink of death. "You want to say that you want to seize the territory here?" That could completely kill Moonlight Maria, but Li Ang didn't do it. On the contrary, after treating Moonlight Maria, he took over half of the territory. Who knows what the other person is thinking? Even if they racked their brains, they couldn't come up with an answer. In fact, Li Ang just let Moonlight Moria and others live here because he was too boring. If he was left alone in this huge terrifying three-masted sailboat, it would be really lonely. Moonlight Moria doesn't know yet, the value of his existence is just to add a little vigor to this place. If you let him know, I'm afraid he will vomit blood on the spot and fall into a coma again. As our neighbor, he is not without benefits. At least, when we encounter some powerful enemies, even we can't shake it. With his presence, we can keep us safe and sound." Moonlight Moria said with a little emotion, and her tone was full of confidence. "Lord Moria is right. Now, let's take the initiative to help him build the castle, so that he can have a good impression on us. In this way, even if we have trouble, he will not stand by." "Yes, yes, yes." Absalom and Hogback immediately proposed. "I'm going to do it myself, too, and join the ranks of helping him build the castle." Moonlight Moria made a rare opening, said. He has always been arrogant in the eyes of people. But after today's impending death, he seemed to have changed his personality in an instant. Instead of the arrogant demeanor he had in the past, he became a little more stable. With this change, Absalom and Hogbark looked at each other and were secretly surprised. This is to change in the good direction, not in the bad direction. At this moment, Moonlight Maria is worthy of the title of the 7 Wuhei under the king. ... P.S. 5 more will be delivered. Kneel and beg for flowers. Comment votes. Chapter 039 _ Build a castle open black lens bracket for flowers close black lens bracket. The Great Channel, the Magic Triangle. The fog is lingering all year round, making all the pirate ships and warships in this sea area feel the dark days, the loss of time, and the inability to capture. Every day, whether it is night or day, it is dark here, and it is impossible to tell the movement of time. Horror bark. Here, half of the site is no longer under the jurisdiction of Moonlight Moria, but belongs to the new owner, Li Ang. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of iron blocks colliding came out, and in this quiet environment, it was extremely harsh. Come on, don't waste time. Absalom looked impatient and shouted to his subordinates. A group of zombies were carrying wood, slate, iron bars and other materials as they were instructed, and carried them to the position of a castle prototype in front. This castle naturally belongs to Li Ang. And Absalom, Hogback, and even Moonlight Moria, all came here to help. If they want to have a good relationship with Li Ang, they must not be cold, but very enthusiastic. The other side. Li Ang was lying on the soft chair, leisurely watching the scene in front of Absalom, who was instructing the man to help him build the castle, with a smile on his face. Beside her, Perona was wearing a pure white dress, looking cute and moving, especially the devil's figure, which could not be concealed. Perona in maid outfit, coupled with her delicate and cute baby face, is not too bloody. How long will it take to complete it? Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and asked. About a week. Perona thought for a moment and said softly. In a week, building a castle is already very efficient. Now, with the Devil's Forest of the Terrifying Bark as the dividing line, the Dark Territory is Li Ang's territory. Even Moonlight Moria wouldn't dare to take half a step here without permission. A week. I can still wait. The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a faint smile. His eyes rolled, looking at the gloomy surroundings, nothing but the sound of the castle being built. As soon as I heard it, the breeze was blowing, and the sound of the leaves flapping was particularly gloomy. There are castles, beautiful women to serve, and a younger brother to help with some trivial matters. Li Ang lived here, just like living a life like a local emperor. Front. The manpower and material resources for building the castle are very abundant. Basically any material can be collected inside the dread bark. Occasionally on the shore, there will be some abandoned pirate ships floating. Maybe there are many treasures in these pirate ships, waiting for people to discover. Where's the swordsman Ryoma? Li Ang glanced around, and couldn't help but ask because he didn't see the shadow of the swordsman Longma. Chapter 039 Building a Castle for Flowers. Li Ang glanced around, and couldn't help but ask because he didn't see the shadow of the swordsman Longma. He's practicing swords. Perona's red lips parted slightly, respectfully. It's really hard work, but unfortunately, I can't point him. Li Ang smiled and shook his head. His swordsmanship, which has been systematically modified, stands directly at the top of the pyramid. Therefore, he was unable to give some pointers to the swordsman Ryoma with the comprehension of many swordsmanship. Just because he is strong in swordsmanship does not mean that he has a deep understanding. Even compared with Ryoma, his understanding of swordsmanship is not as profound as the other. However, with the modifier, he directly modified his swordsmanship level and reached the ultimate swordsmanship. Outside, is there any news? Li Ang continued to ask. The news about you, my lord, has made the whole sea boil. The Navy headquarters has issued a reward list with a reward of 300 million berry, which is used to arrest you, my lord. Besides that, I haven't heard of any movement from the Navy headquarters. Come to think of it, it should be that your strength is so terrifying, your lord, that they are also apprehensive and dare not act rashly. Perona didn't think about it, and told the truth about what she knew. 300 million berries. You really look down on me. Li Ang said with a smile. 300 million berg, this amount is not too small. In the Great Waterway, this bounty is no less than that of Wangxia Chiwahai, and it has already stood at the top of the pirates. Even in the New World, this bounty is rare. With this bounty, it is completely possible to get the top cadre of the 4 emperors to play. My lord's name has spread throughout the entire sea area. However, there are still many pirates who think that your lord is just opportunistic, and did not escape with your own strength at all. They also said that compared with the Golden Lion of the Year, you are still too bad. The Golden Lion is relying on your own strength, while you are relying on luck and the negligence of those waste navies in the naval headquarters. These guys are so nasty. They don't know how terrifying your strength is. If I meet them, I will tear their mouths. Perona bit her red lips, her face full of anger, and said viciously. Ha ha, what do their words have to do with me? I don't need to prove anything, just feel at ease. Li Ang laughed loudly, folded his hands, stroked Perona's tender and pretty face, and said bluntly. It is a fact that he can escape from the Navy headquarters. As for what others said, how could he possibly care? If he had to prove himself even if he escaped from the Navy headquarters, wouldn't he be mentally retarded? However, sooner or later, these people will understand how ridiculous their words are now. But at present, Li Ang is not ready to go to the sea, so he will cultivate for a month and then decide what to do next based on his mood. P.S. Ask for flowers. Ask for comments. Chapter 040 Cute and Charming Perona for Flowers. Ask for comments. Close black lens bracket. A week later. Dread Bark, Lord of Darkness. A huge castle has been completed. About 30 meters or so, towering above the clouds. Misty, wandering around the castle. The environment here is particularly gloomy. Occasionally, a few bats fly over, and the sound of the sound makes people's scalp numb and their hearts terrified. Inside the castle. Li Ang sat on the sofa in the hall, squinting his eyes slightly, feeling the quiet atmosphere. His body and mind were baptized, spotless. The quiet atmosphere can cultivate people's sentiments. Li Ang's strength is already very strong, but what he lacks is the heart of a strong man. After all kinds of edification and baptism, his mentality can be better integrated into the current body's terrifying strength. Sir, dinner is ready. Perona was wearing a white dress, like a maid, floating in the air. Her lovely and charming appearance, coupled with the juvenile face, it made people spit blood. Li Ang opened his eyes, and what appeared in front of his eyes was Perona's charming figure. Immediately, his body reacted instinctively. Sir. Perona was full of doubts, looking at Li Ang, very puzzled. The other party was clearly awake, but why did it seem like he didn't hear her? The little girl was puzzled. Seeing Perona's cute appearance, her big eyes blinked, and her delicate and pretty face was full of doubts, which made her a little more honest and cute. She is wearing white silk stockings, and her beautiful legs are straight and slender, floating in the air, which is even more charming. Cough cough. Li Ang coughed dryly and nodded. Let's go and have dinner. Sir, please. Perona showed a smile, her red lips moved slightly, and said. Her pink hair was scattered on the back, rolled up in strings, and the dress only reached the shoulders, revealing white as jade shoulders, a slender waist, a plump figure, and a beautiful and moving figure. On top of her head, she also wears a high hat, with a black appearance. The hat is made up in pink, which matches her delicate pretty face, which is incomparably beautiful. Li Ang was fascinated all of a sudden, and his eyes stared straight at Perona. Feeling the strangeness in Li Ang's eyes, Perona's pretty face showed a rare blush, and she was a little flustered. She rubbed the corners of her clothes with both hands and didn't speak. The atmosphere fell into silence. The weird atmosphere made Perona not know what to do. Big man. Perona's beautiful eyes looked at Li Ang, her red lips moved slightly, and she wanted to speak again. At the same time. Chapter 040 Cute and Charming Perona for Flowers. Ask for comments. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. At the same time. A warm object blocked her red lips. Huh. Perona's beautiful eyes widened, and before she could react, even her breathing became a little messy. After a minute, Li Ang looked at Perona, whose pretty face was flushed with red, and the corners of his mouth were slightly upturned, and said, Perona. Yeah. Perona's whole head seemed to explode, and blood rushed to her forehead, causing her to temporarily fall into confusion, completely unaware of what was going on. It's delicious. Li Ang tapped the corner of his mouth with his fingertips, and the residual fragrance made him smile involuntarily. In an instant, Perona's pretty face was even more crimson, and she could not wait to bury her head in front of her Uxiang, like a little girl, extremely shy, not daring to look directly at Li Ang. Candlelight is used in the castle, and the firelight is relatively weak, which can illuminate the entire area. But occasionally with the breeze from the window, the firelight will flutter with it. Under fire. Pieces of clothing appeared on the carpet, disorganized. Originally from the corridor, to the sofa in the hall, and then to the resting house. The two seemed to be in a big battle. The huge castle was flying and dogs were jumping, and the swordsmen were practicing swordsmanship outside the castle, and they had no idea what was going on here. That is to say, in the castle, there are only two people doing some indescribable things. From the house to the hall, there is an inexplicable smell in the air, which is gone with the wind. An hour later. Perona's pretty face was rosy, her slender hands encircled Liang, her delicate face was leaning against Liang's chest, and she felt the heartbeat. What made her unbelievable was that she actually took the initiative to cater to her just now. However, the adults are really in a hurry. There are still some. Perona thought of this, her pretty face was on fire, and she quickly shook her head. At this time, Liang looked at the bright red color on the sheet, stroked Perona's pink hair with both hands, and looked at Perona, who was as well behaved as a kitten. Days like this are considered family happiness. With a smile on his face, Liang thought to himself. Those so-called days of fighting and killing, how can he live a faster and happier life now? Accompanied by beautiful women, ordered by a younger brother, and rested in a huge castle, this is life.